Alaikum. Welcome back for our final segment of this News and Views show this morning, hosted by myself, Aisha Kaji. As you heard earlier on, we were talking to Zukiswa Wana and Mohammed Abla earlier today. They were talking about their giving up the Goethe Medal in empathy with the Palestinian people. And our last guest for this morning, and our usual guest at this time for Fired Up with Ashraf Gangrekar, is, of course, Mr. Ashraf Gangrekar himself. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I believe
Walaikum.
we're going to be talking
Sorry.
about cultivating empathy today, which is such a
Well, there aren't
serendipitous
there
thing.
aren't any coincidence in life. This is divinely planned. Walaikum salam, Aisha, and to the listenership and the viewership of Salam Media. Thank you so much for allowing us to join with you again today.
Thank you for being here. So, talk to us, Ashraf, about how the cultivation of empathy and the need to do that differs from being sympathetic.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This for me personally, as it is always the case, this for me is a crucial thing, Aisha. It's so easy, and sometimes these two words, and I'm not here to give Webster's definition of the words. These two words are used interchangeably. I'm sympathetic, I'm empathetic, etc. That though is not the case. And I want to argue the case here this morning that we, and quite honestly, as humanity, and particularly as Muslims, we need to be more empathetic. And the difference is the following. When you feel sympathetic, and there's nothing wrong with this feeling, it's an important emotion, is to then say, well, you hear of somebody else's misfortune and you feel sorry for them and you feel pity for them and you say to them, well, I'm sorry, whether it's for your
Mhm.
loss, condolences, you walk to, down the aisle, buy a gift card, and I'm sorry. And so all you're doing is reacting to perhaps to how they are feeling.
Right.
Empathy is when you take the time, make the effort. And really, I'm going to suggest you take a step back and you try to understand how that person is feeling. And I'm going to emphasize the word how. Because when you do this, in a sense, you put yourself into their shoes. So that, for example, for us as Muslims, and you've heard of somebody's passing, and we'll say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un, of course, and then we'll
Yes.
say, oh, I'm so sorry to hear. Sympathy. But
Mhm.
if you, as we all have suffered loss in our lives, in family, when
Mhm.
somebody had
Mhm.
passed on, we then took a step back and says, you know, I actually understand how you feel. I'm here for you. That is empathy. Because what you've done for this person, these are the type of characteristics that I really want us to develop, particularly in these days of Ramadan. Is that I
Right.
give you, sorry, one other quick example of this, and it's the easiest one because we're all either guilty or, praiseworthy of this. When we
Mhm.
walk past a homeless person, let's say somebody on the street who has his little bowl out for us, when we are just throwing in money, and hurrying
Mhm.
away, I'm going to argue that sympathy, that shame, he's
Right.
on the street. But
Uh-huh.
when you actually stop there and you ask the person, how are you doing? I know it's tough. Is there anything else that you need? Because the first thing we need when you do this, Aisha, and to the listenership, is that you
Mhm.
are validating another human being, that
Absolutely.
human being matters. You understand? Whether you're
Mhm.
living in
Mhm.
this on the street or not. And so now irrespective as to where they are and where you are, they are a human being, creation of Allah. And so for me, this empathy has these following characteristics. And I really, in terms of, I'm sure we can engage each other, please, but I just want to, highlight these. Don't be judgmental. Somebody, a friend of yours, or, you hear somebody's going through a divorce. And you say,
Mhm.
oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I told you that fellow wasn't right for you. Um, how do you think this person feels? All you're doing is feeling pity. But if you
Mm.
were empathy, if you showed empathy and you took a step back and say, that's terrible. I can't begin to imagine how tough this may be, but I want you
Mhm.
to know that I am here for you, that I'm prepared to listen, because this is the second category I say to you. Number one, don't be judgmental. You cannot be judgmental if you put yourself into the shoes of another to try to understand their pain. There's no judgment in that. Sympathy
Mhm.
can potentially be judgment. Ah, it's your own fault. The second
Mhm.
part is to be an active listener. Don't just, yeah, no, I'm tired of this now. Really take the time to say, this person matters, their feelings matter, I need to listen to it. And then, number three, and this for me is the crucial part, you need to validate their emotion. Perfectly possible that you might
Mhm.
not agree with what this person is feeling. You might thinking, oh man, this is an overreaction. But the feeling is important to that individual. And if you want to be empathetic, then you need to take a step back and say, well, this is important to that person. It may not be as important to me, but because this is a human being and that feeling is important, I'm going to respect that. So, Aisha, I just want to bring this down to Ramadan and where we are at. So,
Right.
alhamdulillah, our du'as and thoughts with our brothers and sisters in Palestine, particularly Gaza, yeah. So that, and I was
Absolutely.
talking to somebody yesterday, he says to me, Ashraf, I try to never complain again because no matter what I'm going through, I say to myself, the people in Gaza are going through worse. Now, if we take this as a lesson at our iftar tables, however much or not much that we have, to then
Mhm.
share with particularly young children, to say, whatever we are eating, just spare a thought for the children in Gaza. Not a thought of, oh, shame, but you try to imagine what it must be like to sit in the rubble, to find a sense of hope, to have something to have iftar, empathy. I want us to, those of us Allah is blessed with children, teach them, ask them, sit at the table. Always encourage the eating and the table part, but sit at the table and ask them, is there anybody in the class who perhaps is being picked upon, who perhaps is being alienated from the rest of the
Mhm.
group?
Mhm.
And for you to go forward and say, well, here I am. I actually am trying to understand what you're going through. But if you needed to chat, etc., then I am happy to listen and to not give unsolicited advice.
Right, right. That's wonderful, Ashraf. Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to recap those 3 points that you made about trying to cultivate empathy. As you said, sympathy is not a wrong emotion, but empathy is really trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes and to imagine what they're going through and to cultivate that. You've said very beautifully, don't be judgmental. And I think we
Sure.
all have this tendency. I know I'm certainly guilty of it myself. Secondly, be prepared to listen actively. In local lingo, memela, everybody, listen. And thirdly, validate the emotion or emotions of the person or people that you are trying to empathize with. I think that's a really beautiful little life lesson for us all, Ashraf. So thank you so much for that. And also your advice about sitting together at the table, getting the people in your family or your friends around the table to open up about the injustices, the small, sometimes petty seeming
Sure.
injustices that they may be experiencing in their school life, university life, their workplaces, etc., and to stand up for the rights of others. It is important that before we can do that, we can cultivate empathy towards them. Ashraf, we're almost at the end of the show. Thank you so much for that. Are there any last words from your end?
I actually just want to pick up on that last excellent comment you made with regards to be highlighting injustices, etc. Because I want to say this. In the month of Ramadan, when we try to cultivate, excellent habits, improve our characters, etc. This point of empathy, and studies have shown that it would improve, for example, gender relations, race relations, and more importantly, relationships between either families and spouses. And it's easy to understand. So let's say, for example, husband and wife, or spouse, or siblings, or etc., have a difference. And before we are worrying as to who is right, somebody steps back and says, let me try and think and put myself in the opposite person's shoes and let's see
Mhm.
what they are actually feeling. Just imagine how much things can get better. So let me thank you heartily for your empathetic interview and for your excellent role in everything you do in the community, Aisha. It was great to chat to you again. I look forward to doing so again in the future. Assalamu alaikum wa
Subhanallah.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Subhanallah. Thank you very much for everything you do in your community as well, and in this Salam Media community also, Ashraf. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Kareem to you once again. May we make the most of these days, these first 10 days of mercy, and keep saying to our Rabb, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum bi rahmatika astaghisu. Assalamu
Ameen.
alaikum
Ameen.
to you.
Wa
Looking
alaikum
forward
salam. Allah
to
accepted your
chatting with
audio.
you again. Ameen, Ameen,
Thank,
Ya Rabbal
thank you so
Alameen.
much. Take care. Salam.
And with that, viewers, listeners, we've come to the end of today's edition of News and Views here on Salam Media. I'm your guest host for this week. Please tune in to be with us again tomorrow. We'll be talking, as I said earlier, with a very good friend, Firdaus Bulbulia, about the keffiyah, the symbolism, the significance of what we uh, often forget when we are wearing our keffiyahs in solidarity with the Palestinians. We'll also have a very special guest, world renowned author and activist Susan Abul Hawa. She's a Palestinian American who's just recently returned from Gaza, and we'll be talking to her as well. And then in our local insert, we'll be talking to Anthea Houston and more about her tomorrow, inshallah. Thank you for being with us. May Allah be with you for the rest of your day until we meet again. Ma'as-salama. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.